Welcome back to another inspiring episode of Stories Sustain Us. I'm your host, Stephen Schauer, and today I have the joy of delving into the remarkable journey of a friend and former colleague, Carrie Brown, who is now the Deputy Director of the Arts and Culture Department in Phoenix. In this episode, Carrie shares how her unique upbringing and experiences have shaped her approach to art curation. We'll explore her impactful work on the San Pedro Creek Culture Park project in San Antonio, which is where I first met Carrie. This is an innovative project where art and sustainability intersected, revitalizing public spaces and engaging the community, all while preserving the cultural and historic foundations of the city. And in some cases, literally preserving some historic foundations. It's a really great story. You're going to want to check it out. Carrie also gives us an inside look at the Sombra project in Phoenix, a groundbreaking initiative addressing the extreme heat issue by creating shaded cooling environments. Awarded a grant from Bloomberg Philanthropies, this project highlights the crucial role artists play in solving urban challenges and the importance of a community support for local arts programs. Before jumping into the interview, let me give you a quick bio for Carrie's impressive career. Carrie Brown has dedicated the past 20 years to advancing public art, focusing on innovative, community-engaged projects. She began her career at Valley Metro, working on Phoenix's first light rail section. In 2007, she moved to Los Angeles to help establish a new public art program for the LA County Department of Arts and Culture. By 2011, she was leading projects for Austin's Art in Public Places, including the city's first artist-designed community garden. In 2017, Carrie became the first public art curator for the San Antonio River Authority, managing projects at San Pedro Creek Culture Park and earning a Best Public Art Canvas Award in 2021. Returning to Phoenix in 2022 as the Deputy Director of the Arts and Culture Department, she now oversees a public art program with a budget of over $20 million, and she helped secure the Bloomberg Philanthropies Public Art Challenge Grant. Carrie holds a BFA in photography from Arizona State University and is a certified interpretive guide through the National Association of Interpretation. Now join me as we uncover how art can transform our built environment. Let's dive into Carrie Brown's story, where creativity meets sustainability, right here on Stories Sustain Us, where we are inspiring action through the power of storytelling. All right. Well, welcome, Carrie. How are you doing? Thanks for joining me on Stories Sustain Us. I really appreciate you taking the time to be part of the show.
Well, thanks, Stephen. I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you so much for thinking of me for your podcast.
Yeah, it's been a little bit, as we just talked about in the introduction. You and I know each other going back a few years from the time we worked together at San Antonio River Authority. So I really appreciated getting to know you then, and just seeing all the great things that you were doing in San Antonio. So I can't wait to hear about everything that you're doing now that you're back at home. I think it's your hometown in Phoenix. So let's jump into it. This is about storytelling. So tell me a little bit about your story. What's your journey from childhood to present day Phoenix? What are some of the milestones and things that were important in your life as you grew into the great art curator that you are now?
Well, thank you for that. Well, first, Phoenix isn't actually my home. I'm from the Chicago area. I grew up in a town called Lombard. It's about 30 minutes straight west of Chicago. And, but growing up, I came out to Arizona. I was my whole family was a big Chicago Cubs fan,
Yeah.
and they have their spring training out here in Arizona. So I had come out here a couple of times as a kid. And when it came time for college, I was like, let's get as far away as I can. And Arizona sounds great. So that's how I made it out here initially, was for school. But growing up in the Chicago area, I think there were a couple of things that really sort of informed who I am today and how I kind of operate in my career. And one of those being, my mom always worked in Chicago for a long time. She worked in the Embassy Tower right on the Chicago River. And my brother and I, as kids, would oftentimes take the train into the city and meet her for lunch. Of course, in the summertime, we could do that a lot more when we weren't in school. And so it just really kind of sort of instilled this wanderlust in me. It was really fun to go on these little mini adventures. And we lived like 5 minutes from the train station, so it was pretty easy to get there.
Yeah.
And then every time we were there, we sort of take a different route around. We might, go to this shop to get some popcorn, but on the way we passed this what was public art, but at the time I didn't know what that was.
Sure.
And I distinctly remember when we went to Daley Plaza, which is where the Picasso sculpture is,
Yeah.
and just sort of being enamored by it and kind of wondering, like, how the heck did this get here? What is this thing? And then also being fascinated by what the people around it were doing. Sometimes they'd walk past like it wasn't even there. Sometimes they'd kind of trip over their feet because they were looking up at it. And other times they just kind of sat there and looked. And sometimes they might be, drawing or what have you. And so that was really kind of informative and really kind of, it was instilled in me to really look around and see how the built environment was and why things were there. And then the other thing that was a really big part of my childhood was gymnastics. And
Okay.
I spent many years doing it and had many injuries as well.
It's a tough sport. It's a very tough sport.
But, one thing that I had to do a lot in gymnastics, and I think any gymnast would tell you this, is you're visualizing a lot. So you are imagining yourself going through your routine. Maybe it helps you calm your nerves. Maybe it helps you just kind of, go over all the dance moves one last time before the tape starts. But it really kind of trained my brain to think of something that, wasn't right in front of my face. And so in the arts, a lot of times you're having to kind of make the case and asking people, no pun intended, to take a leap with you, to say, hey, I have this idea. I think we can make this work. We're going to bring in an artist to do this. We're not sure exactly what it's going to look like, but this is the process we're going to take. And, I think we can get there. And so, I realize that might sound a little bit of a stretch, but to me, it's a kind of a direct connection, just again, how my brain kind of operates and thinks about things, and just having that ability to really visualize what the possibilities could be and see how I would like it to be. And so those are two like really kind of important things. And then, like I said, I, made my way out to Arizona for school. And my senior year, I was in the art office and about to talk to my counselor, and I just saw an advertisement for a part-time job. And I thought, hey, I could use a little extra money. This sounds really interesting. And it turns out it was for Valley Metro, working on the light rail project. And that's how I got into public art. And I was really just hooked. I mean, in school, I did study photography, so I was studying art. I never felt like I was that good. And I always sort of wondered, like, could I have a career in this? I'm not really sure. But then once I got on the other side, on the administrative side, that's when things really clicked for me. And I really learned how to kind of operate from behind the scenes and support other artists in their vision, and really, bring them to the table and have them be a part of how the built environment was coming together and be a part of their civic lives and have a say in what all that looks like. And so that became really exciting to me. And like I said, I was hooked. And so from there, I went from the next job to the next job to the next job, which took me to LA and Austin and San Antonio, where we met. And I've just been super, super lucky to have really supportive supervisors and people along the way that have helped me along and supported me in all the different jobs that I've had, and have just really been there even after I've left those jobs, being able to reach back out and say, hey, I have this new thing. I'm not quite sure what to do. What do you think? And so I've just been very, very lucky to have those opportunities. And, and now I find myself back here in Phoenix, where I started my career. I'm now working for the City of Phoenix Arts and Culture Department. And it's just an absolute thrill. It's a wonderful public art program. They have a long history of doing really great work. And I've got a great team behind me. And it's really great to be back in Arizona.
Well, before we go any deeper into what you're doing now in Phoenix, let's backtrack a little bit. A couple of things I want to dig a little bit deeper on.
Sure.
First, I really appreciate how you explained your gymnastic visualization and how that's tied into your profession. I can totally get that, the way that you explained that, having had to pitch things before in my career that, aren't really concrete yet. They're just an idea, just a vision. I could see how that could benefit you. And so I really appreciate that connection. I really wouldn't have thought about that before without you kind of explaining that connection. Going back to your childhood, however far back it needs to go, when did you start getting into photography? Obviously, you carried that into your college years, so I'm assuming that started pre-college, high school, middle school. So tell me a little bit about how that started for you, and were you doing other artwork as well beyond photography? So what's that kind of journey like for you?
Yeah, well, most of my spare time was spent doing gymnastics. So,
Yeah, sure, sure.
I wasn't in the band. I didn't do all the other things. It was really just that. But when I think I was probably a freshman, maybe a sophomore in high school, I was gifted some old 35 millimeter cameras from my
Right on.
uncle,
Yeah.
and lenses as well. And so I just started to kind of play around. And the high school I went to actually had some really great art programming. So again, super lucky that I had that exposure.
Yeah.
And we had a really great photography class with a lab, all the things that we would ever need. And now I had this new equipment. And so I thought, hey, I'm just going to check it out and try it. And I just really loved it. I mean, I'm not always comfortable sort of, being the center of attention or being in front of the room, although my job sometimes leads me to do those things.
Yep.
And so I felt like with photography, sort of being behind the camera was a little bit more quiet. You had to sort of sometimes wait for the right shot or the right
Sure.
lighting. And so that's where I kind of felt a little bit more comfortable. And then that just sort of fed into those experiences I had when I was younger, kind of walking around the city with my mom and looking around and seeing things that maybe other people weren't looking at. And now here's a way that I could capture them. So that did start in high school. And then getting into college, I started studying something else. I was convinced that I wanted to be a physical therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that wasn't working out very well. And I just sort of had this moment where I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to spend all this time and money here, like, let's do something that is meaningful to me that I feel like I could make good use of. And that's when I made the switch back to photography. And at that time, digital photography was very new.
Just
It was
starting out.
expensive.
Yeah.
We had one digital photography class in the whole university that I could never get into. So I only took film classes, and I took color and black and white, mostly utilizing the 35 millimeter, but just really learned a lot about, how to kind of see the world in a way, where you're having to sort of set all these things to capture the right image there. And then I think the thing that got me really excited is when we started to have classes where, say, we would stage a gallery exhibition, because that's when I started to sort of see the behind the scenes and how all this kind of comes together.
Yeah.
And I had a really fun time. We had the student gallery, so there are a couple of shows that we put together there. And then as part of my, graduating project, I had to put on my own show. And that was super fun because then I had to find the facility people that are going to give me permission. And then I had to tell them what I was going to do. And then I had to find the artists and set the schedule and all that fun stuff. So that's kind of how I got hooked, is really a gift from my uncle, is how it got started in earnest.
Were you keen on streetscapes, like you talked about when you were kind of wandering around Chicago, or landscapes, portraits? What kind of drew you, and pulled that creativity out of you? What was kind of your favorite subject matter?
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of portraiture. I was a lot of times looking at landscapes or looking at architectural views where, especially in Chicago, I mean, there's a lot of architecture to look at.
Sure.
But even just the contrast between that and where I was living in the suburbs, was really interesting. Or if people were involved, it was really more of kind of like you said, street photography, where I wasn't, posing somebody or doing a portrait, but I was sort of capturing them, in action as they were, just hanging out on the street.
Capturing that story of people moving in an urban area, right? Yeah, right
exactly.
On. Yeah, very cool. Do you still do photography on the side now that you've kind of gone to the behind the scenes part? Are you still dabbling in it for fun?
It's definitely behind the scenes for sure. I still have all of that equipment, and I actually, this was maybe 8-9 years ago, I inherited another set. So I have really great equipment. But I tend to use my iPhone for
Sure.
photographs, like so many people.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I definitely can't let it go. And so at some point, I know in the future, I will bust it out again, and I will dust off all the parts and get into some real photography, because it's always something that I've enjoyed, and I don't think it'll ever go away. But just, yeah, in the last few years, it's definitely been on the back burner.
Yeah, I can relate and appreciate. I kind of started out later in life than you did, but when I eventually found my way to photography and videography, I just kind of fell in love with it, and here I am doing a podcast. But yeah, even though I've got nicer equipment, I still end up using my phone for most things also, which phones these days are pretty darn good.
They're pretty good.
So since you're carrying it in your pocket already, if you see something, at least me, if I see a cool shot out on the street or when I'm out hiking or something, I just grab the phone out, and it's a lot
Exactly.
easier than carrying all the expensive equipment around. So I get that. I can relate to it. So your journey took you said, to Los Angeles and Austin and then San Antonio before coming back to Phoenix. Are there any highlights of that journey in Los Angeles and Austin and San Antonio that you want to touch on before we jump into what you're doing now in Phoenix?
Yeah. I was thinking about, like, especially in the context of this podcast and what we're talking about today, there
Mm-hmm.
definitely have been some kind of nuggets along the way that really sort of feed into this larger idea of sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
And they've really been projects that have stuck with me. It's even just starting here in Phoenix with my first job working for Valet Metro on the light rail. I mean, that was a major, and it still is a major investment in the growth of Phoenix,
Yeah.
and wanting to provide, mass transit for the amount of people that were moving here, and still to this day moving here. So that was kind of the start of it. When I was in LA, I wasn't directly involved in any of the restoration projects on the LA River, but
Mm-hmm.
one of my coworkers was a volunteer. And so there were several events that I went to, and that started to kind of get my head around how the arts could be involved in projects like these and how
Yeah.
meaningful that could be. On a smaller scale, when I was in Austin, I worked on a project. It was a partnership with the YMCA and the city of Austin. And we commissioned an artist to create a community garden. And in that area, there is essentially a food desert. I mean,
what part of Austin? East Austin, I'm guessing, or
this is actually North Austin.
no, North Austin, really? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there was one grocery store that was in the area, and all of the rest of the food offerings were fast food. The grocery store wasn't very big, and so we recognized that there was a need there, and that really came from the community as well. So as we were developing the project, they talked a lot about having this available to them, in their day-to-day lives beyond just what they could maybe grow in their homes. And so it was kind of a unique challenge to bring an artist in to do that. But I think ultimately it was really successful. And with the support of the community, to my knowledge, it's still growing strong and
Right on.
And has even expanded. And so again, much smaller scale, but kind of speaking to that broader issue of sustainability. And then of course, working at the River Authority, I mean, I learned so much about that and why things are designed the way they're designed, flood safety versus, habitat restoration and how it all works together. And so I just had a very small role in kind of bringing the arts to that conversation. But I always felt it was very important to have artists as part of the conversation. They are just bringing a different point of view, different perspective to the conversation. And it doesn't always have to result in a thing or, a piece of art. It could just be they are part of a design team, or their way of problem solving is different than, say, an engineer's way. And so I really could start to see that with all that I learned at the River Authority, and try to carry that through in all the work that I do to this day.
Well, and from my perspective, for anybody listening or watching to this, I think Carrie was just being very humble about her very small role at the St. River Authority. It was, I think, much greater than her humility is allowing her to brag about. I mean, she was the first public art curator at the River Authority and was specifically brought on to oversee a project on the San Antonio, on the San Pedro Creek Culture Park project. which is this multi-million dollar, I think they're up to almost $200 million project now on the San Pedro Creek, that was, not only restoring a creek and taking care of the flood control aspects like Carrie mentioned, but also really lining that creek with some incredible artwork that I know you had more than just a small hand in, and it's really beautiful. The project's mostly complete now at this point, completed after you and I both left the River Authority, but I think we both had a hand in helping move that project forward. It's something I'm proud of, and I just know what you did there, and it was really wonderful. Is there any part of your experience there that you want to talk about, or a particular project or a particular moment that stands out to you, as kind of explaining that intersection of art and sustainability that I've seen you in action do such a great job with?
Well, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that. And it is definitely a project I am very, very proud of. It was not an easy job to leave.
No,
it was very
it wasn't an easy project either.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And it just has such a special place in my heart, not just the project itself, but all the people I got to work with. And I think, there's so many things that I learned on that project. But one thing that comes to mind was the work that we did around the historic foundations that were discovered as part of the construction, and something that was unanticipated, and the process that we kind of went through to figure out, okay, well, what we do about it in the physical sense, like do they come out? Are they staying in? Do we build around it? What does that look like? But then also in the sort of artistic, interpretive sense, how do we, when the decision was made to keep them and we redesigned the site, how do we honor that? And how do we, bring artists to this place that is so ripe for telling stories and for, sharing this rich history, not only of what it was, but what it is now and what it could be in the future. And so that was just this fascinating learning curve for me. But it was really eye-opening in the sense of thinking about all the different ways that we could have artists involved. Again, not just the physical structure, but also in the programming that we were starting to think about and put together, and the people that we were bringing in, different organizations, different leaders to help craft that and put all that together was really just awesome. I mean, it was frustrating because of the delays, but it was really awesome to kind of see the process and see all of that come together. And then I recall I came back to San Antonio when the second segment was opened, and I just had this like total sense of pride. And I had this moment with myself where I was just crying.
Nice.
Kind of in the background, just being really proud of all the work, knowing how many people it took to get to that point. And that area is where those foundations were. So I definitely wanted to see that come to fruition. And
you're referencing, just to make sure people understand, when you talk about historic foundations, there were obviously, San Antonio is a very rich, culturally rich city, and has a long history going, back to, the 1700s with Spanish colonization, and, thousands of years with the indigenous populations that lived along the river and the creek, really since, 10,000, 12,000 years ago, we found archaeological evidence of human habitation. But I think you're referencing the foundations for the AME church, the first AME Black church founded in San Antonio following the Civil War. So that really was an incredible find, and complicated find, like you mentioned, and how to keep those foundations intact now that we discovered them, and build the project around them to honor that legacy. And you had a big hand in that, and it was really impressive to watch you work and navigate the all of the interested parties that wanted to have a say in it, the different governmental funding partners that were involved, Corps of Engineers, because they had a hand in that project. It was really a lot of incredibly complex moving pieces, and you navigated it with a whole lot of grace. And I haven't been back to
Thank
San
you.
Antonio since the project opened. I intend to go visit that same spot just like you did, and I'll probably shed a similar tear, because it's such an incredibly important thing that you were a part of, to
Mm-hmm.
honor that important legacy. And I almost feel moved talking about it right now. We're actually recording this on Juneteenth, even though it's not going to air until July. But just that
Yep.
idea of where Black Americans, Black Texans, were able to come and worship freely for the first time following the Civil War was just important. So thank you
And I think
for
one of
your work
the,
on that.
yeah, thank you. One of the things that was also really exciting about that effort was, well, two things. One, we were able to find a list of the original parishioners, which was
Wow.
super
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
And then also just being able to connect with the current congregation. I mean, the church still exists; it's in a different location.
Yeah.
But to connect with them and to bring them back to the site was just really, really moving. It was so awesome to be a part of that.
Yeah. And just honoring the indigenous cultures along the San Pedro Creek as
Mm-hmm.
well, with some of the other artwork and murals and things that were done. It was really a mindfully done, thoughtfully curated project that you should be very proud of. So again, thank you for your work on that. And
Thank you.
I encourage anybody, if you're visiting the San Antonio area, visit the Riverwalk, visit the Museum Reach, Mission Reach. Amazing projects in their own right,
Mm-hmm.
but make sure you go visit the San Pedro Creek project and see some of the amazing public art that Carrie had a hand on bringing to life. So
Definitely.
so tell me now, any final thoughts on that before we bring you up to Phoenix now? I don't want to cut off your thought process if there's anything
No,
else you
I
want to
mean,
share about your time in San Antonio.
I could go on and on about that project, so we probably should end it there and move on to the next topic.
Fair enough. So tell me, yeah, you are now the deputy director in Phoenix. Is that correct? Tell me a little bit about what you're doing these days.
Yeah, so I'm working for the city of Phoenix. I'm the deputy director of the Arts and Culture Department, and my main responsibility is to manage the public art program. So Phoenix's program was started in 1986, like a lot of programs across the country started up in the 80s. And they've got a long history of just doing really great integrated works, getting involved in citywide initiatives. And so I'm just really excited to be a part of that. Our department basically has three main areas of focus, one being the public art program,
Mm-hmm.
two being our grant program, and then three, we also manage a number of cultural facilities. So like, for example, the Phoenix Art Museum is actually owned by the city.
Oh, wow.
We maintain it, but we don't do any of the programming, the great programming that happens inside. We can't take credit for that. But
yeah.
So those are kind of the main areas. So I do have my hand in a little bit of everything in my role, but my main responsibility is the public art program. And every year we do a plan that forecasts out our projects for the next 5 years. And if all goes well, that plan will be approved by City Council next week. And this will be our biggest 5-year budget ever at $25 million. And so we've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. Part of that increase includes a massive expansion project at the airport. If you've ever been to the Phoenix airport, there's a number of wonderful
Southwest,
public art
who hasn't been
projects
through
there.
Phoenix?
Yeah. So there's going to be another large expansion at the airport. And then last fall, the city did a bond election, which is the first time they've done it in about 15 years.
Wow.
And so we'll have a percent for art as part of that bond package as well. So we've got a lot of great stuff coming up. I wish I had like double the staff to do it all.
Yeah. Well, so Phoenix is really hot, if you haven't noticed. I've been just reading some stories, to prepare for this discussion, and recognizing that, obviously climate change is a thing, and it's it's already hot to begin with there, but it's getting hotter and staying hotter for longer throughout the year. Just reading recently about how EMS, first responders are now being trained in how to give kind of mobile ice baths to people, so that who are having heat stroke, to help them stay alive until they get to the hospital for treatment. Seeing that some of the city parks that are kind of out on the outskirts of town in some of the mountainous desert areas get shut down on extreme heat days. So I
Yeah.
know you're working on a project in some stage of the project. I'm not sure where it is, but it's a project that is really a great demonstration of connecting art with these sustainability issues, where you're going to be creating public art that also serves as shade structures to help the community find shade during those hot Phoenix days. Can you talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah, so this is something we are super excited about. Last fall, my boss and I got together and put together a grant application for Bloomberg Philanthropies Public Art Challenge. And the Public Art Challenge is a really unique grant opportunity. It's for temporary artwork, and it's up to $1 million, and it must address a local civic issue. And so we kind of built upon a previous project that was done, I believe, with NEA grant funds, National Endowment for the Arts grant funds, a few years back. And so we kind of built upon this idea and created what we call Sombra, which is Spanish for shade. And so
Yeah.
we posed this idea to hire artists to create shading, cooling environments that we could place around Phoenix and help to, tackle this crazy urban heat issue that we have here.
Yeah.
As you said, it is hot and getting hotter. Last summer was my first summer here, and we had the July where every single day was 110 plus degrees.
Jeez.
And I thought to myself, what the heck did I do? Why did I move here?
It was only 100 degrees in San Antonio. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there's some really, really smart people here doing some really amazing work. And the city has an Office of Heat Response and Mitigation.
yeah.
And I believe we're the only city that has an office like that.
Yeah.
Or at least it's the first. And so we've got some really smart people doing some great, great work and bringing in a lot of data and research to the conversation. And they became a key component of our grant application because using their data and their research, we were able to pinpoint particular parks around town that were hotter than others for various reasons.
Sure.
And so we kind of coupled that with, okay, where could we actually stage something, and, thinking about logistics as well. But they were a key partner in pulling this idea together. And so we have gone through, so we were awarded the grant, which was very exciting. That was last fall. And we have now gone through the artist selection process. We haven't yet announced the artists. We are getting our everything ready for that, getting our website together and getting all of the information gathered. So we hope to announce that very soon. But we do have the artists selected. They are local and from out of state. And for those that are out of state, one of the stipulations was you have to come here in the summer. You have to come in July or August or even now in June to really experience what is going on. Now, obviously, there are extreme heat conditions happening all over the country.
Sadly.
But we really wanted them to experience what it's like here with our temperatures and our humidity, and kind of seeing how people move around in the environment or don't move around, stay inside, all of those things. And so that's the stage we're at right now. We're kind of getting everybody under contract, scheduling those visits, and just starting the work. But the ideas that they came forward with as part of the application process were super exciting. And so we're all sorts of materials that we're working with, from fabric that might be woven or sewn to wood and metal. There's a lot of community engagement that'll be a part of these projects. And so the effort is really sort of twofold. It's one, as I mentioned before, bringing artists to the table to tackle a really important civic issue here in Phoenix, creating these structures that'll actually provide some relief. And then also having this educational component where we are, empowering the community to really have the tools to, keep themselves safe during this time. I mean, if you live here, you sort of, the drill, but there are certain things that maybe people don't realize, like early signs of heat exhaustion and when you really need to take a step back, get into some shade, drink some water. They say if you feel thirsty, it's too late.
It's too late. Yeah.
And just things like that. And then again, working with our heat office to, bring in that data, bring in the tools that they use, and bring in their knowledge to the conversation. So it's not just about creating some really cool art projects that you'll get to see all over town, but it's, creating a legacy and helping to, be part of that conversation where, Phoenix wants to be the leading heat ready city, and there's a lot of great stuff happening, and we want to be part of that effort and continue that work that our partners in the city are doing.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see the pieces. I'm assuming when you make the announcement, there'll be, renderings and things that are kind of put out with that announcement, but I really can't wait to see it when it's finally up and ready as well. What's the time frame from announcement through design, construction, and kind of grand opening? How long is that going to take?
Yeah, well, we were really ambitious in our idea, and now that we're in it and doing it, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I shouldn't have been so ambitious. So we are planning to make the public announcement probably in the next month,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll have all the information out there. Like you said, we'll have descriptions of the work. We'll have some upcoming events coming up that people can participate in.
Sure.
We'll have some of that educational information as well. And then the projects themselves will get installed next year. So it'll be kind of springtime next year, 2025, where they'll start popping up in different parks. So again, depending on the project and what it is, those installation dates will vary. And the duration of their installations will vary as well, but they'll be there for at least a month. And then in the fall of next year, in September of next year, we are going to take all of them and reinstall them at our Steele Indian School Park, which is one of our largest city parks in Central Phoenix. So they can all be together, and we will have a one-day festival there. And that's the very ambitious part where I was like, oh my gosh. But we just had a site visit with our partners in the parks team the other day, talking about how we're going to do that and where they're going to be located. And so, it's a total team effort with so many different city departments coming together, and everyone's really excited. So where there's a will, there's a way. And we're really excited just to showcase this. And again, just have that celebration of, there's ways to, be in this environment and be happy and healthy and be smart about how, you are engaging. And, even
Sure.
things like the second you leave your house, to have a water bottle with you. Even if you're just going a short distance, always bring that with you. And so just having all of that information and really empowering the community is what we're excited to do.
Yeah, and people are going to have to adapt everywhere. I mean, climate is changing most everywhere, and as you mentioned, it's not just Phoenix and the Southwest that are enduring these incredible heat waves. It's happening across the country and sadly across the world. So, how do we adapt, and how do we learn and change our behaviors? All of that is something that's important. We're all going to need to do something differently as our environment changes around us. So that's great that, art can play a part in that. That can, not only help maybe protect people temporarily by providing shade in your case, but also come along with that educational component. I think that's really a great way to raise awareness through something that's beautiful. Taking something that might be a hardship and turning it into a public beauty and educating the public is really great. So I'm happy to hear you doing that. And it's kind of why I wanted you on the show, is to make sure people know that that's what can be done.
Exactly. And they can, artists can be part of the solution. And the other thing that we have kind of said from the beginning of this idea was that if there are any projects that kind of prove to be really positive prototypes that can be replicated, can be placed permanently, we're definitely open to that. And I think the artists are really excited to explore that possibility. And so, we're kind of thinking along those lines as well. There are other initiatives. In fact, one that we're involved in where we are strategically placing shade structures, near bus stops that don't have full shelters, or even just busy street corners. So this just becomes part of that larger conversation. And like I said, our heat office is doing great work. And one thing they said recently that really, I feel like kind of like demonstrated what we're sort of dealing with here and what we're trying to advocate for. And that is, when you think about, living in Chicago in the wintertime, we have all this infrastructure to deal with the snow. We have snow plows, we have salt for the roads. We sort of have all this at our, fingertips to help us get through this extreme weather, but we don't have that in a heat situation? What do we have in a heat situation? And so I think our heat office is really advocating for those tools, and I think the city has been implementing them, and especially in recent years by expanding libraries as cooling centers, and thinking about things like that, but really kind of having that infrastructure at the ready, because it is extreme weather. It's just not a flood or snow.
Right.
It's just very hot.
Yeah, and
but just
very
as
deadly.
important.
Yeah. It unfortunately takes life all the time. So
Yep,
it is something that
exactly.
needs that thoughtful infrastructure put into place. So really impressive what's happening down there in Phoenix. Are you at all involved still in river issues? I know the Salt River is there, and I think the Rio Reimagined is a very well known, similar to the San Antonio River Walk. The Rio Reimagined in Phoenix also has a bit of a national reputation as well for being an innovative use of a river in a semi-arid environment. So do you and your office get involved in anything along that area of Phoenix as well?
Yes. In fact, when I got here, I kind of inserted myself in that
Good.
in that effort, because of the work I had done at the River Authority
Sure.
and all that I had learned as part of that project. And so, yes, they have done some really great work already. We've made some great connections with our environmental programs office, as well as our planning office. And so we've been involved in some of those efforts to, think about how we bring the community back to this area in safe ways. And obviously they've got some really great trails there, so it's already a great recreation space. In fact, we are working with the environmental programs office for an event in the fall, in October, where we are commissioning a temporary installation, kind of supporting the efforts that they're doing as part of that event around urban wildlife. And so, yes, we've already got some irons in the fire with that project. And then as part of our public art plan that I mentioned earlier, we do have a bucket of funding that we've identified specifically for that effort. So there'll be permanent projects in the future, as well as other temporary projects and smaller scale programming and workshops that we'll support as well. And right now they are working on a pedestrian bridge that's crossing over the river.
Okay.
And we have an artist as part of the design team, so we're involved in that as well. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely ripe for artist intervention and engagement, and everyone involved is very open to that. So yeah, I'm super glad to be a part of that as well, and to be able to share, what I learned as part of my work at the River Authority, and what was successful and what could potentially be implemented here, even though it's a different environment. It has very similar goals, and so it's really it's great to be able to share that knowledge that I have now.
Yeah. I my past with the River Authority had invited to speak in different places, and often when I was a panelist at different conferences, someone from Phoenix was also a panelist, because there was so much similarity between the San Antonio River Walk and Rio Reimagined there in Phoenix. So kudos to you for being part of that, for inserting yourself into it, because you need to be a part of it with your experience.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. I did read about one other project that I honestly, I don't know if this has anything to do with you in your office. I can't imagine you didn't have something to do with it, but if it wasn't involved with you guys, apologize for bringing it up in advance. But I recalled when the Super Bowl was in Phoenix, there was this giant mural, almost a 10,000 square foot mural put on the side of a theater, and it was created by an indigenous artist, and celebrating indigenous culture and history. And it's just a beautiful mural. I remember seeing it and learning about it. My assumption was something that big and grand for the Super Bowl. I'm sure you and your office had something to do with that. Is that a safe assumption?
Well, we can't really take credit for it. It was on a private building, so it was really kind of a partnership with the building owner, some of our local nonprofit arts organizations, as well as the NFL. But we did play a small role, and certainly were, aware and supportive of the project. It's absolutely beautiful. When people come to visit, I make a point to
Yeah.
drive by and see it. It's just stunning.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a great mural scene here in Phoenix, and
Right
a
on.
lot of times the assumption is that we're doing it and we're part of it, but a lot of them, I would say most of them, we can't take credit for because it's the private building owners, as well as like I said, our local nonprofit arts organizations that are coming together to create it. We've done a few great ones that we're very proud of, but
Sure.
we certainly can't claim all of them. There's just a really great mural scene here in Phoenix.
Yeah. Well, good. Sorry for bringing up something that you didn't directly get involved in,
No,
but
no, that's okay.
it
We
is really a
love it.
spectacular mural.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really is something that is, if you don't, whoever's listening or watching, if you don't know what we're talking about, go Google it. It's really beautiful, and the honoring of the indigenous legacy, from Arizona and the Southwest is also incredibly important, obviously. So
very much so. And that design informed a lot of the graphics for the entire game. So all around town, like street
right on.
banners,
Yeah.
or other signage for events, like fan events and such, that design informed all of those graphics. So you really got to see it in
Awesome.
multiple forms. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, we're kind of getting to a place where I want to be respectful of your time. But I also want to give you a chance to kind of plug whatever it is you want to plug. Is there, something where people can, a place they can go to learn more about your work, the city of Phoenix, anything that you want to, give as a call to action for the audience to what they can do to support a local art scene, or, help, with that intersection between art and sustainability. So the floor is yours, Carrie. What do you want to promote and tell people to do?
Well, thank you. Well, you definitely can check out what we're doing in the city of Phoenix, including our Bloomberg Philanthropies Public Art Challenge grant at phoenix.gov/arts. So we'll be keeping everything updated there. We are creating actually a separate website for Sombra as well. So look out for that, and you can follow along what we are up to and what's happening as part of that effort. But I would also encourage folks to just become familiar with how their local arts programs are funded and be supportive of that if you so choose. For example, here in Arizona, our state arts agency is struggling with a pretty small budget. And so it affects all of us because they are a granting agency. And so when their budget's smaller, their grants are smaller. And I think what we're starting to see now is kind of that cross section of the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds that we were so graciously given, that we were able to share with our local arts community and local artists. Those are running out. And so that level of support is starting to wane a little bit. And so, if it's something that's important to you, figure out how those funding sources work. You speak to your local elected officials and express your support for the arts, and having artists be, a part of the conversation and part of the fabric of your community, and having a voice at the table and tackling civic issues that you might have, big or small. I think it's really important to have all those perspectives be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, right on. Couldn't agree more. The more active voices and participants in these important discussions, I think the more social equity we'll have as a culture, and the better we'll all be because of it. So
absolutely.
Well, thank you for that call to action. I'll make sure to put the website phoenix.gov/arts on the notes page so folks can find that, and anything else that you and I may talk about offline, I'll make sure gets onto the notes page as well. So at the final few minutes, Carrie, I end every episode asking my guests about hope. This show is about some heavy topics, right? We talked about heat issues and extreme heat issues and how deadly that can be, and how we're all going to have to adapt to that, and other climate extremes that are coming, that humanity's partly responsible for, and now we have to adapt to it if if we can't completely stall it out or reverse it. So not necessarily pleasant discussion. So I always want to end on some hope, and hope being defined as, a vision for a better future and the agency to help make that future become a reality. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Just kind of give your gut reaction. You don't have to think about them too much.
Okay.
And the first question is, what is your vision for a better future? It can be for you personally, professionally, or for the globe, whatever you want to talk about. What's your vision for a better future?
Wow, that's a great question. I guess I would say, people really coming together in a much broader sense to tackle these issues that we're all facing. And I think we have all the resources, we have tons of smart people. We just need to come together and focus on this. And I totally think it's possible. And I think there's some great work that's happening already. It's just sort of connecting the dots, working together, sharing resources, and just doing that on a much grander scale.
Right on. Second question, why is that your vision? Why do we need to come together and connect more, and why?
Well, I'm a firm believer in you can't do everything yourself. I mean, even in my small team unit, I oftentimes will ask for feedback from my staff and ask for their points of view, because I don't think my best work is going to come out of me sitting in my office by myself and figuring it out on my own. It might be good, but it's not going to be my best.
Sure.
And so I think that's when you see the best work, is when you're bringing people together, again, different perspectives, different points of view, they got their eyes on different things. And then you come to this solution that is the best solution and really going to be the most beneficial to everybody. And I truly believe that that's when, the best of us as humans kind of comes out, when we're able to work together and bring all of our expertise and all of our points of view. It doesn't have to be, like, oh, I have a PhD in this, and this is why I'm saying this. It could just be your point of view, your perspective as a community member living on this block, and all of that's important. I think that's brings the best in us out.
Right on. I like that. So the final question, imagine your future vision of everybody coming together, connecting more, working together more harmoniously to find solutions to these difficult things that are challenging us. That has happened. How do you feel?
Oh, wow. I feel proud, even more hopeful, excited, maybe even a little bit of relief
yeah,
that we've, made some solutions and made it better for the people that are going to come after us, and give them a soft place to land. And yeah, I think it would just feel, I feel like a lot of us would just like let go of a lot of anxiety.
yeah. Right on. This episode number 5, and no one said relief yet. So I can appreciate that, because there's a lot of anxiety out there in the world right now. There's a lot of tough challenges that we're facing.
Mm-hmm.
Not only just our day-to-day life, how we're going to pay the bills, but like these existential threats of climate change and
big issues,
inequalities and all of these things that are just so giant and looming. I could see relief being a feeling when we do it. There will be relief. Yes. Right on. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for taking some time to join me, and I appreciate you as a friend. I enjoyed very much working with you years ago, and hope our paths continue to cross in the future. And I wish you nothing but the best. You've got a big job in front of you there in Phoenix, but the city of Phoenix is lucky to have you. So I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. And same to you. This was really fun and really great to connect again. And I'm sure we'll cross paths again in the future.
All right. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of episode 5 of Stories Sustain Us. I'm really grateful to Carrie Brown for sharing her journey with us. To me, Carrie's story underscores the significance of art, or at least how I see art. It allows us to see beyond the immediate and imagine the vast possibilities. Her contributions to projects like the San Pedro Creek Culture Park in San Antonio and the Sombra project in Phoenix beautifully illustrate the intersection of art and sustainability, breathing new life into public spaces, raising awareness, educating all ages, and moving us to action. In reflecting on Carrie's journey, it's clear to me how crucial artists are in challenging social norms and advocating for sustainability. Artists can push the boundaries of what's possible, using their unique perspectives to inspire change and foster community resilience. They remind us that art is not just a reflection of our world, but a powerful tool for shaping a more sustainable and equitable future. Now, with this show, Stories Sustain Us, I've said, I think, more than once in the short few episodes that this has been out, that the meaning behind the show, or the purpose for the show, is to use the power of storytelling to move people into action, to inspire action. Clearly, data and facts and figures, that's all important, right? We need experts, we need engineers, we need scientists, we need all of the technologically minded individuals who are creating advancements that are moving our collective world into a more sustainable future. All of that is important, clearly. But what's really important as well, or equally important at a minimum, is the work of artists and storytellers, because they take all of that data and all of that kind of just numbers and facts and figures, and an artist or a storyteller can take that and put meaning into it, put emotion into it, and allow somebody to connect to it and feel like it's time to do something different. It's time to change their behavior or join in a movement. So while we need the engineers and the scientists and the technological folks, we've already had some of those kind of guests, and we're going to have more of them. We also need the artists and the storytellers, and we're going to continue to have those types of guests on this show as well. So I, for one, am grateful for both the folks who use one side of their brain for the science and technology and engineering, and the folks who use the other side of their brain for the artistry and storytelling, because we need both sides of that to be successful as we move towards a more sustainable future. So I'm grateful for people like Carrie, who are using art to help move us forward to a better future. So I'm also grateful and very much appreciate Carrie's vision for a collaborative future where communities come together to tackle challenges. Her vision for a better future leaves me feeling hopeful and excited that it can be a better future for all of us. I hope her story has inspired you as well to see the immense potential of art in transforming our built environment and enhancing public spaces. Let me give you a quick plug for the next episode of Stories Sustain Us. My guest next week is a neurodivergent and disabled entrepreneur and the founder of Lady Rebel Club. We have a deeply personal discussion about neurodivergent and mental health issues and the importance of creating more opportunities for women and other marginalized gender entrepreneurs, small business owners, creators, and leaders who are also neurodivergent or disabled. This ties closely into sustainability because, as you'll learn next week, entrepreneurs who are from marginalized groups often tend to use their creativity and passion in support of impact-driven ventures. So check out Stories Sustain Us on July 23rd, wherever you listen to podcasts, or at storiessustainus.com. And I'm going to ask, so please like, subscribe, and follow Stories Sustain Us. And if you're enjoying these episodes, why don't you share them with family or friends as well? Pass the word around. I would really appreciate it. Till next time, I'm Stephen Schauer. Please take care of yourself and each other. Take care.